3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the Brute Strength Podcast, where we explore strategies for training, competing, and well-being shared through experiences from some of the sharpest minds in the fitness space. Now, welcome your host, Micah Shoemaker.
I looked, as all good podcast hosts do, they stalk their guest in a very, appropriate way. There's an inappropriate way of stalking, but I only do the appropriate way. And so I saw the podcast that you shared. Yeah. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to listen to this thing. And for those that want to know what we're talking about, it's The Science of Happiness with Peter. Is it Ayata? Is that how you say his name?
Peter Attia.
Oh, see, there you go. Attia. That made me sound dumb. All right. And
names. That's all right.
And Dr. Arthur Brooks. And anytime I see like happiness, I'm always like, something else about happiness.
Yeah, it got you though, huh?
It got me. It sucked me in. Okay. Yeah. And I want to get your thoughts on it in a minute. Here's the thing, and I wrote it down in my notes. Here's the thing that like really just stood out to me was when he was breaking down the DNA, or as he says, the macronutrients of happiness. Right. And he was like, you need all three things. You need enjoyment, you need satisfaction, and you need purpose. And I've heard a lot of people talk about a lot of different things when it comes to happiness, but that resonated in a way that, I'll be honest, I don't know if I've had time to even digest yet, because it was like, man, this is so different. What drew you to him, or did you read the book, or like?
I've listened to the book. I was gonna say I read it, but I don't read very much anymore.
Same.
Gotta be honest. It's really interesting because like as a coach working with people, I've never struggled with it, and I've never had an issue like enjoying training or doing the hard work. But I think a lot of that comes from my martial arts background, and like it's like, okay, you're going to do 10,000 kicks, and you get okay with that over time, like as a kid and as you grow. So I think the monotony of stuff I'm okay with, and I see the value and like the enjoyment of doing something. And I've always looked for like, okay, how do you help people who don't have that background or greater understanding of like something like CrossFit, where CrossFit's tough because there's so many things you got to get good at, and it can be very draining to get better. And then once you get good, you're not actually good. You have to like even get better and better. Like at a high level, you're starting to go from, let's just say 4 seconds of a burpee box jump over to 3.7 seconds. And that could be super frustrating for a lot of people to understand and grow into. If they don't understand that it's like, this is the thing that I want to do because I like it. I have a really good time doing it. It makes me happy. And you get fulfillment because you achieve something. And let's say like you have a micro goal of getting faster at the burpee box jump over. You achieve that. You feel good about it. Keep moving on. Maybe you have the goal of going to semifinals or the games. You achieve that, feel good about it. And then hopefully through that process, you have a coach, family members, friends who you can build relationships with while you do this. And then it becomes something like really, like he said, in your DNA of like, this is just what I do now. And you learn that. And it's like, okay, how do I continue to do it because I really enjoy it? And then at some point you may not enjoy it anymore, and you can take those lessons into something else that you really enjoy and apply it. So I really like that, for like to sum it all up of what he talks about is like, you have to have the goal, you have to achieve the goal, you have to enjoy the process while you're achieving the goal, and you have to experience with other human beings to really get something valuable out of it at the end of the day as a human being. So I like it. And it's hard to get people to understand that because CrossFit will grind you up.
Yeah, 100%. It's interesting. You led with something that it piqued my interest. From my personal experience, when I've taken an athlete on, they're typically and I want to see if you agree with this. They're typically self-motivated, self-driven, and there's very little that I'm doing to motivate them, to rah-rah them around the goal in which they deem that they, is worthy of their time. It's like, I love Jordan Peterson says this. He said, the place that we desire is infinitely more desirable than the place that we are, right? It's the grass is always green on the other side, thought process. But I'm curious for you, when you take on an athlete, yes, I understand you're trying to help them, maybe in this scenario, find some happiness in what it is that they're doing, because we can both agree if you're happy doing it, there's going to be a sense of longevity that otherwise probably would not come, or probably would not be experienced, I should say. But are you finding that you're typically having to motivate them and direct them in that path? Or like, how are you, because I'm always fascinated with this, how are you going about having those conversations? Because what we're talking about, at least from my understanding of it too, is like, it's not a feeling, it's more of a fulfillment. Like, is that how you took it? Because that's how I took it. Is this more of a sense of like belonging, and like, this is what I'm meant to be doing? And that's a very different feeling than the fleeting feeling of happiness. So I'm just curious, how do you go about those conversations? Because they're hard.
Yeah. I'll ask people, like, do you have fun doing it? Like, just right out the gate of like, is it fun for you? And it's also telling people that it's not always going to be fun. And he does cover it in the podcast, how like,
he does.
It's not always going to be fun, and you do have to, grind a little bit, because you're not going to achieve it if you don't keep grinding. And it's not like, so that's tough, because you got to teach them how to balance that, because it's not going to be fun every day, but you do need to have some semblance of it being fun. And if it is fun every day, you actually, down the road, let's say you achieve something, you might not even find it valuable, the achievement itself, because most people really like the struggle, when we talk about the journey, and how everyone's like, oh, it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. But in the journey, when people say that stuff, I'm like, do you realize that the journey is like tough? Like, the best stories you hear from human beings is typically like, we went camping, and we had everything planned, and it was below, it's like 30 degrees, and it was windy, and it was raining, and we had to like set up the tent, and like it was so hard to start the fire. And like, people tell more stories of adversity typically when they tell stories about adventures, and there's more detail and enrichment in those stories, I find, than like, oh, we went to Disneyland, it was great. Like, oh, what'd you like about Disneyland? Well, like, I really like the Matterhorn. Oh, okay, cool. Like, versus like, oh man, we went to Disneyland, and they're like, we had to get these fast passes because we had to cut all these lines, and there's so many people. And then, like it's a tumultuous like tale, of an adventure that they had. And I think we don't realize we do that until someone kind of makes it aware to us that we do, that we really like the hard struggle as human beings. And so if you can be okay with that, you're going to be good doing something challenging. And not everybody's going to do stuff that are challenging in life. We're very lucky to be in the CrossFit space. We're like, I would argue, we're the most challenge-seeking individuals I know.
It's celebrated, right?
Yeah, it is, and that's good. It makes life, I think, more rich, more valuable, because it is hard. Because if it was easy, you'd just get bored with it. I think I would personally.
I concur with that. I definitely concur. Actually, I've shared this on the podcast before. My training why has nothing to do with an outcome. And that's not because that's what I think it should be. No, it's straight up. It's the, Jocko Willink talks about it. I've heard David Goggins talk about it. They all have their different ways of talking about it. But in my estimation and from my experience, I've found that hard things calibrates us.
Yeah.
It really is. That's the best word I can use for it. It's a true calibration. It's a true North Star as to like what's fact or fiction sometimes. Because I've heard it put this way too. It's kind of interesting. There is nothing more true. There's nothing more true than a man's strength, and of course it could be women too. That's just what the quote is. And what they mean by that is, if you can't pick up a 315-pound bar and deadlift it to the above the knee, then like you can't do it. I mean, you can't fake doing it.
Yeah.
If we put 315 on there and we both agree this is 315, it's a 45-pound bar, we got 6 45-pound plates. There's no faking that. It's
Right.
That's the truest North Star, and I find that very interesting. So here's where I'm going with this. Is what I find is, you're talking about that tumultuous journey, the choosing to go down a path that is more difficult than the one that you could choose. And in this case, we're obviously talking fitness. And I wonder, for how many CrossFitters out there, what's at the bottom of that well? And what I mean by the bottom of that well is this. What is it, what pain are we chasing? Or what are we trying to cover up? And it's not necessarily a bad thing, but how I look at it is in the moment that we're experiencing this pain, and every CrossFitter listening to this, it instantly will go, I understand. And you have to make that choice. You know what I'm saying? There's a very definitive, I'm going there choice. And there's a podcast I did with Ryan Souter, and he said this. He said, I would be so interested to hear what self-talk each different CrossFitter, at the very elite level, has when they're making, cognitively making that choice. And maybe I'm assuming that they're cognitively making it. Maybe it's not that. Maybe it's a subconscious thing, right? Just like a lion goes and kills its prey. It's not really a thing. It's just reacting. It's just doing what it's been trained to do all of its life, which is kill and survive. I wonder if it's that. I don't know. It just came to my mind of conversation he and I had.
Yeah, I think at the highest level, you might actually be on something there. I think the best in the world, they know it's there, right? So biology wise, you can feel the pain, right? Your heart rate's elevated, you're running out of oxygen, you got the burn in the muscles, and you want to keep going. I think the desire of what's at the end is very powerful for them, as far as winning and achieving or qualifying, is something, the pain of losing is greater than the pain of what they're experiencing in the moment.
Yeah.
And
good.
I think a lot, so my wife's, I would consider an elite athlete, and I've asked her this a lot of what do you, she's like, I don't think about anything. It comes, the pain's there, but it's what am I, it's not going to get any worse, And I think a lot of the elite athletes get to a point where they've experienced that pain so much, because so science wise, once you reach your lactic threshold, once you get to your VO2 max, it's not going to go any higher, So realistically, the pain that you're experiencing, you're either your body's just going to be like, nope, we're done. And it's going to cease exercise, or you're going to keep going. Right. So, and that's the science. There's no arguing that. And I think they get to a point where they realize that and they go, oh, this is not so bad. I'll just hang out here for a while. And that's why you see people like Tia or Matt walk across the finish line and wave, and they're not hunched over. They don't roll across the finish line, because they've been there enough. And now they're content with that feeling, because they've practiced it. But if we're going to talk about just general people training, I think what would be valuable, if people listen to this who are just general exercisers, is you're trying to displace homeostasis for yourself to increase your fitness, right? Your biological things like your cardiovascular respiratory system, your muscular endurance, your fiber strength, all of these things that you're going to get great hormonal response, great longevity of life. You're going to push yourself. And most of the time, how long is it going to last? A minute, in that zone. Yeah. And then you're going to eventually probably be like, I got to stop. And if you're with a good coach, you might just be doing interval training, and then coach knows like, oh, we're going to go for 230 and that's what you got. And then we're going to give you 3 minutes rest, and you're going to slowly creep up on that threshold, push it out a little bit, and then bring it back down, let the system cool down. And you get these micro doses. So you're getting all these great benefits of CrossFit's high intensity in a responsible, reasonable way, because you don't have to be an elite athlete to push out your biology that way for health and fitness. So in that moment, I would encourage people, like, it doesn't matter. Like, it's cool to hit a PR. It's cool to get a 2:30 Fran time. Those things are cool. But in the moment, just be like, this is making me healthier. I know it doesn't feel like you're getting healthier in that moment.
I was about to say it's counterintuitive.
Yeah. Yeah. You're definitely getting healthier because you're pushing out your homeostatic, like, set point. And you're going to get some benefits, right? So after the workout, your body's going to change. It's going to adapt. And we know that through training,
Sure.
That's why you can lift heavier. That's why you can move faster. You can hammer the assault bike a little bit harder, like, because you're pushing those edges out.
Yeah.
And I think that's a positive thing that you could hone in on, like in the moment when it hurts. I definitely do that for my own fitness. I'm like, all right, this hurts, but I want to be healthier. I want to live a little bit longer. I want to get stronger. So just push a little bit more right now to get that benefit. So I think it's individual for each person, but I do think at the highest level, like, when you're that good, and they're the people who are like clutch performers, or, the Tias and the Mats, they're not thinking about anything. I don't think. I think they're just like, this is for the glory, and I feel great. That's why Tia's smiling on bar muscle ups after she's done 50 thrusters in the 1K row, Yeah.
And a full weekend,
Well, they are.
Yeah. I mean, we just skip past that part, but something that I would love to pick your brain upon, and it goes to this topic that we're talking about regarding finding fulfillment, being happy, having purpose in what it is that you're doing. CrossFit is has a very public measuring stick. And what I mean by that is there's a leaderboard, and there always has, and there always will be. And I think it's what makes it, a lot of it very competitive, is because there is that consistent leaderboard. I mean, imagine going to a football game and them not showing the leaderboard, or showing the scoreboard rather. It would be asinine. You would lose interest.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. And you would lose interest. So I do understand the necessity of it. However, it can cause, as human beings, too much of anything is a bad thing, right? It's like bacon is great, but too much of bacon can cause high cholesterol. Well, I believe the same thing when it comes to this comparison. And I understand that you as a person have to know yourself first, right? I mean, there's nothing that beats good self-awareness. Like, my God.
Yeah.
But as you coach people, and as you've been an athlete yourself, I'm curious, how do you guide people? And this is just a really nice segue to how do you guide people to, like, finding fulfillment in that, like the process, quote unquote, and really not to get derailed ultimately by the leaderboard. And it's like, look, I get it. You can try to set goals all you want, and they can be process driven. And believe me, I do that with my athletes, and they're really good at sticking to it. But at the end of the day, if you go to a comp and you get, your ass beat on something, you're going to be like, dude, I feel terrible about myself. How do you walk someone through that? Not just as a coach, but then maybe as some athletes that don't have a coach can, learn something from this as well.
Yeah, that's everyone's going to do that always, right? Because we're tied to that. And from an early age, like, you get grades in school, you get awards for stuff. It's ingrained in us, in our culture, and specifically, like, the society that I'm used to in the US and how that system works. So it's tough. Like, you're going to have to retrain mentally and emotionally a lot of that stuff if people want to, or just, sometimes it is what it is. I think the biggest thing is to know that it's okay to be upset. And I don't think enough people tell athletes, like, yeah, be upset. Like, I don't, we watch like people in the space and YouTubes and stuff, and some coaches do, but I think you don't ever hear coaches say like out loud or on large enough platforms and social media of like, yeah, it's okay. Go ahead, cry. Like, let it out. You're upset. You just lost. And let them feel those emotions. And I used to like have a hard time too. Like, how there's like, what's it, a league of their own. There's no crying in baseball kind of thing. Yeah. So like, I think there's a level of that, just society wise, but we need to be okay with loss. We need to be okay with not being good at something. We need to be okay with like showing our emotions and not being tough all the time. I think that can help you get through those hard processes a little bit better. Like in the scenario that you listed of going to a comp and getting your teeth kicked in, like that'll be okay. And if you know that your coach and the people with you, if it's teammates or significant others, they all let you know beforehand that they're already proud of you. I think that's really powerful too. Because anybody who spends a much time in the gym for this goal, and anything, it doesn't have to be in the gym, any goal that you really want to achieve, those around you need to understand that. That's a good place to start too. If there's not a lot of people that you have in your life that don't understand what you do, you might want to take an inventory of those people and maybe find some new people, or would be helpful, so that they understand like, hey, I spent a lot of time doing this thing. I want to achieve it. Right. CrossFit's really interesting in a way that it's not normal. I think Olympians kind of go through this too a little bit, depending on the Olympic sport. Because some people are like, oh, you're a bobsledder, or like you're a skeleton racer. I don't know what that is. Like some of the fringe Olympic sports, like people are like, oh, you're a competitive CrossFitter. That's really weird. But if you were like, oh, I play for the NFL, everyone would be like, oh my God, you play for the NFL? That's so crazy. And they would let you do whatever. If you were gone every weekend, every day, like, they'd be like, yeah, he's in the NFL. It's totally acceptable, right? And they understand and get it. If you're a CEO of a business, they're like, they're a CEO. They work for Apple. Like they're, whatever. And it's acceptable in our society. So it's hard as a CrossFitter. I see this happen all the time. People are like, well, you're just working out all the time. That's not, you should spend more time doing X, Y, Z, this and that. And that can grind on the person too. So if you have a lot of those people in your life, and you can realign them, I would highly recommend that. Get people around you that support you. As long as you're not being, harmful to yourself or others, you definitely are on a good path. And I think CrossFit is something that is worthy of trying to do. It's going to better yourself in a lot of different ways. And if you're good about how you train, I think you can have a lot of longevity and not be dangerous in that you're hurting your health. You definitely need to know that there's an end line in the sport, because you can do too much of it and you got to get out of it and then figure out what health looks like and what daily training looks like. And if you have a good coach, they can help walk you through that or continue to coach you and be a lifelong coach until you like really find a rhythm on your own. So like those types of things, like you got to set that up. Like you have to know what's your exit strategy, who's around you, and are they supportive and understanding of what you're trying to do? Have you been clear with them? Are you taking inventory of the people around you and making sure that they're not causing you any more stress because you're already pretty stressed? And then, when you go to this competition and you lose an event, you're going to cry a little bit and be upset. And then you'll get beyond it because you'll ask yourself, like, who do I want to be? Why have I been doing this? And in the next event, can I show myself, And then you also have to be okay with like, you're not going to be good at everything. That's a hard one. Cause in CrossFit, there's so many things. Whereas if we were talking about like, golf's a good example because there's like 3 pretty big things you got to be good at, right? Your long, short, and your putting game. Mm-hmm. So there's some things you got to be good at. But if you're just a 200-meter runner, you just have to be good at 200-meter running.
100%.
But as a CrossFitter, you have to be good at 200-meter running, pushing a sled, carrying a sandbag, doing bar muscle ups, running, like lifting weights, snatch, clean and jerk, back squat, deadlift. Like there's so many things. So to think that you're going to be great at all of them is also a misunderstanding of and awareness of the sport, who you are, human beings in general, and what we can and can't do. Now, I'm not saying like go the other end and be like, well, it's okay that I'm not good at this. Like, don't do that, because you got to work on your weaknesses and you got to build these things up. But if you have full understanding of like, let's say you're not so great at ring muscle ups, and they come up in a workout, and there's whatever 36 of them, and your functional capacity is like 18. Well, okay, you're not going to do so good in that workout, and you should already know that beforehand and be okay and like brace yourself with it, and then try to learn and take away what you can from that workout in that moment. See if you can push yourself when it gets hard, and try to get a quote unquote win for you.
Yeah.
And then walk away happy. You can also still be upset with the performance, right? And the fact that like, hey, I need to get better at these. I'm going to work on them. But if you approached it with awareness and you attacked it with like, I'm going to push right here. I'm going to do these in twos and the ring muscle up. So then that way I can do this and that. And like, and you perform that and you run the transitions, and you said you were going to run the transitions, and you get good communication with your judge, and you're not getting no reps, and whatever, you chalk one time, and cause you chalk 1,000 times, and you're like, I'm going to chalk once today. You could make all of these little wins in the workout and get last place and be pretty proud of those things that you achieved in that moment. And then also go back and work on the other stuff and retool and get ready for whatever the next thing is going to be, event or qualifier. And obviously give yourself time, a reasonable amount of time to work on it. But yeah, I think that's a way that you could do that, and have a lot of success and get happiness out of it. But you're not going to be void of like you said, like getting upset in that moment. So it's okay. Like just get upset.
And I love that you just said that, because I think that's really the crux of this. Like, it's like when something goes wrong, we like withdraw in a sense that we're like, okay, well, I shouldn't be upset. Well, I shouldn't be frustrated. Well, I shouldn't feel, disappointed. It's like, no, in fact, the opposite. You should feel upset. You should be pissed off. You should, right? Like, and it's like, and I'm trying to scratch my head and figure out where this came from.
Yeah.
Right.
No crying in baseball is where it came from.
Yeah, right. No crying in baseball. Like, boys don't cry, or like it's really an interesting cultural thing, I think.
Yeah.
Like more than anything. And honestly, when I've had athletes that are in similar situations, that's actually the text will start off with, hey, this happened today and I'm really ticked off. Hey, I just experienced this and I'm really frustrated. My first line back to them is, you should feel frustrated. I totally get that.
Yeah.
Because they have every right to feel frustrated. They have every right that, the expectation they have didn't line up with the reality of what happened. Of course. Why wouldn't you be frustrated? Right. Like, I would feel like you're weird if you weren't. But yet we live in this world where that's not okay, and granted, I don't think swinging all the way the other way. I think, there's a reason they call it balance, right? It's like, you see some people that are just like overly emotional, like everything is a breakdown. It's like, maybe, and like for those people, like, well, I'm not going to get canceled, but anyways,
well, you just got to learn some control, right? So there's emotional control, and it's tough. And if you are one of those people that's like have a lot of emotion and you express a lot of emotion, it would be good to like try. It actually might be best to put those people in more stressful situations, knowing that they're going to get emotional, and like let them know, hey, you're going to get emotional. Let's see if we can control and temper the emotions a little bit. If they want to go down that road and try to like microdose themselves to learn how to kind of control that stuff a little bit. It could be dangerous though, so be careful.
So I've actually done that with an athlete, right? I'll know something frustrates them, and that's exactly right. It's like a microdose, but I'll like write in there. I'll be like, hey, this is the intent of this. Like, you're going to get really irritated most likely, or like, hey, let's go ahead and approach these in singles, because I know your mindset's going to be touch and go for all, whatever, but let's go singles and like see, right? Like, because it's like when something traumatic happens, like the longer you stay away from that thing, and this is science, this isn't bro science, this isn't me just talking out my ass. Like this is real legitimate science. When, something traumatic happens in your life, the further you stay away from it, meaning you don't interject yourself into maybe a similar situation, the bigger the challenge it becomes for you to get over it and for you to move on. And I think kind of the same thing is true in CrossFit. To your point is, when given the opportunity, choose to go through it. And I know that's tough. It's easier to sit in these chairs with microphones in perfectly chilled 68-degree house and say those things. I get it, but I'm doing it too. It's like, it's tough, yes. And so my thing is always try to put yourself in as many of those situations as humanly possible, because I think what happens is you end up getting to the competition and you go, oh man, like now I'm absolutely interjecting myself into this thing known as adversity, known as disappointment, right? And it's like, well, guess what? Just like anything else, it's like the way, it's like, man, if you're not practicing that, it's really, really tough to get on that horse in the moment. And like, you know, people say, oh, well, you know, I'm just a performer, man. I just get out there and I just do it. It's like,
that might be true for some people, but not everybody.
I was about to say that may be true, but there is a select few that is legitimately true for. I have
100%.
not found that to be true for the world as a whole. Maybe I'm wrong.
Right. No. If we're gonna bell curve it, there are people but most people are not.
Yeah.
But
So
I think a cool
go
question to ask people, like in that scenario, is just when they're like, "Oh, I'm frustrated with this," or "I'm having a hard time." It's like, okay, cool. Have you ever experienced a time in your life that you have continued to do something and approached it slightly differently and continued to attack it and practice it and not gotten better?
Oh, that's good.
Because I would argue, like, if you give the good old college try and you put your best foot forward, you're going to get better. It just might take some time. So I always pose the question to them of like, tell me a time, and most of the time, the only time they can tell me is like, well, the time I gave up and I quit the thing. So it's like, okay, yeah, you didn't get better because you didn't even try to get better. But how about the times that you did make an effort to get better? Like, well, I got better. It's like, okay, well, this is one of those times where you're going to have to put in a little bit more time. We might have to do this again next week and the following week and, maybe regress the progression or change it a little bit, but you are going to get better. You just have to put in the time and be patient, because we already know that you have done things in the past where you put in the time and you got better. It just took some time.
And I think that's I was talking to an athlete of mine the other day, and I said, I think that's what's so hard about CrossFit, right? Is that you can put in all of this work, all of this effort, and still be less than.
Yeah.
Right. And the quote that I gave her was the one about the stone cutter, just hammering away at his stone day after day, seeing no improvement. And years down the road, that stone finally split, and he realized that it wasn't the 101st blow. It was all the blows that went before that one. And I think that's so powerful, and that imagery rather is so powerful and even palpable to what it is like to be a CrossFitter. It's you don't see progress, right? Like because it's like looking at yourself every day in the mirror and expecting, to see these drastic changes because you're trying to lose weight. It's like, it just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
But it's the months, it's the years down the road. Great things take decades, not days. And granted, I think you should get better, sooner than a decade, but you get the point that I'm trying to make here. And I think look, and I've shared this story before too. It's like, I'll never forget when I had my first conversation with Elle. I said, I really want to do this. I really want to commit to this. I said, how long do you think it'll take to get, XYZ? And he gave me his honest opinion. I said, cool. I said, unquestionably, I'm going to give it 5 years. Unquestionably. I said, because I said, I've got the foresight to realize already, this isn't something that takes days. This isn't something that takes months, to be good at something. I would even argue to be great at something. And I don't know how to instill that thought process in other people. other than by just asking questions of why do you want something? Like what drives you? Where do you find fulfillment? What do you, as he said in the podcast, why, what were you born for and what will you die for? I love that. My gosh, I love that. But back to the time thing, it's like, I'm not sure how to relay to someone or an athlete, hey, this is, outside of just saying, hey, this is going to take 3, 4, 5 years to get to where you want to get to based off of what we're seeing. But for them to actually internalize that is a whole different thing. It's like, hey, that stove's hot. Oh, don't touch it. Don't. Oh, you got burned. It's like, well, shit.
Yeah. I think it's tough. So like so you gave an analogy that most people are familiar with, and we have a ton of them in the world of, just keep digging, hammer the stone, build the house and then build another house. And like, they're all out there. Sure. And everybody says them, but I think people don't. So going back with like a lot of those sayings got made a long time ago. I think a lot of people were really happy just being a blacksmith or like just mowing the field. And one thing they do say in the podcast, and he says it this way, and basically it's like everybody wants to be like famous. And I think it hits home in the world that we live in right now, because everybody wants, and like we do it too. And Brute does it, every training company does it. Everybody's got to get visibility. You got to get likes, you got to get followers. Cause if you want to get clients, people got to know who you are, right? As a business, that makes sense. There are a lot of people, in the CrossFit space, outside the CrossFit space, who I think their person is becoming a business, which I think is very dangerous, in a lot of ways. Like I don't want to like pick anybody out because I don't want to be rude. I think what they're doing is positive. So like think of any influencer, Instagram influencer, anybody you like, pick them out. You know who they are. They got their 10% off codes. They're selling stuff. They maybe have their programs out, whatever it is, right? Pick whoever you want. They're all over the internet. They are now that brand. They're now a Rolex watch. You're essentially buying a piece of them. And yes, they're making income and it's affording them to do what they want to do, but it's very different than a company like Brute. Brute is out there. It's a business. It's like, Ford. It's a car company. They're making cars. You guys are making training plans and coaching people, but you're not leveraging, your personal appearance, your life, the story of what you're doing. You're not getting on every day being like, hey guys, check out what I had to eat today. Check out my training session. Look at my cool new lifters, like whatever. Right. And a lot of us do that because we want the dopamine. We want the appreciation. We want the likes. We want the high fives. We want the good jobs. And that's okay. I think I'm not saying don't get on Instagram and post things. Like I post things. I love when people are like, yeah, hooray for you. You're killing it. Like that feels good. And they get stuck in that though. And then it becomes a business. And then, so it's now like, well, this makes me money. I have to do this. And if I don't, in the female case, a lot of them, if I don't show my half naked photo on the internet, I'm not going to get sponsors and I'm not going to get paid. And I think that's a dangerous thing to be in because I don't think that's a happy place. And I have heard enough people talk about it. They're not super happy with that portion of their life. They're definitely happy with what it affords them. If they are an athlete, it's the opportunity to train. But like you look at some of these like NFL players or basketball players, they don't have that kind of stuff on the internet. They got somebody running their Instagram and they post photos of them playing games and whatever like shoes they got dropping, but they're not out there like selling their human being, their human self onto the internet. LeBron's like reposting either interviews he's done or whatever things he's got coming up, but it's not this weird, like, hey, I'm LeBron James, check me out today. What's up guys? I'm glad you're all on here. You just don't see that happen. It's like a different thing. And so because everybody wants to be famous and you're running that like hamster wheel, you don't realize that like maybe that's not the thing you actually want. Because realistically, these people, especially in the CrossFit space, I think they just want to train every day. They want to get paid as a professional athlete. They want to go to the CrossFit games and they want to have a good time and life experiences with these people around them. And now I'm not saying that the example I gave before of running themselves like and selling themselves as a business is bad, that because they're getting the things they want out of it. I just don't know how much value they're getting inside, right? When we talk about happiness. And I'm willing to bet though, like, if you had them evaluate, like Peter Attia and them evaluate their life, they would say, hey, you're not super happy, and they're going to grade them. And they talk about this in the podcast, and they have a grading scale in the social economics of like, what's your friends like? How many true friends do you have? What do those relationships look like? How much desire and drive do you have? What accolades are you shooting for? Once you get those accolades, like, what got you there? Why did it get you there? Are you going to continue to do it? Or did you learn a skill set to transfer it over into something else that you like now? Like if you go, like in his analogy, in his life, he was a trumpet player and then, he tore his lip and then went into education in school. And now he's a Harvard professor. Like, so he transferred those professional skills and mindset of being a trumpet player, got injured, taken out of his thing that he wanted to do and transferred it into something else, and, you see that in some people. You see that like in Matt Frazier, but there are a lot of athletes that I've seen throughout the years, because I've been doing this a long time now, come and go and try to do the thing that Matt did, where it's like you go from athlete to quote unquote business person, and it doesn't necessarily pan out. And that might be because they weren't actually happy in the process originally. And that's okay. Like, go to something else and try to find that happiness that they talk about. And it's really interesting to me. Like, so for me personally, as a coach, like I was always like, okay, the thing I want to do is coach at the CrossFit games. And a lot of things happened. And luckily enough, I got hired by Brute a long time ago, got to coach at the CrossFit games, and that fulfilled that thing. And I was happy. It was hard, and it was good and great. Yeah. And then it continued, and I obviously set new goals. I was like, what would it take to get a champion, like a gold medal at the CrossFit Games? That would be so cool. Like, and then this last season, Shanna won in her age group, and she's a gold medalist, and I got to help her do that. And I look back on it, and it's like, okay, I achieved that thing. But realistically, when I look at it, it's like, man, her getting the gold medal wasn't even the thing. That was cool. That was so fucking cool, and hyped about it, and like original goal. And she's a badass, and like, that's super, like, I don't want to take anything away from that. And that's like that's number one on the list. Number two is like, in that process, I got to develop this relationship with her. I got to become part of her life. I got to enjoy, conversations with her about training, how she's going to get better, what we're going to do, what the next training cycle is like, who are her competitors, how does she have to perform in this? Like, all of that stuff, working together, learning about her sons and her life as a doctor, and her past and her history and the things that she's done in her life. Like, that was like numbers 2, 3, and 4 on fulfillment. And for the rest of my life now, until I die, I got to share a portion of that person's life.
Yeah.
And that is cool. That is really cool to me. And like, hindsight is 2020. I didn't know until after she won, and reflecting, like, that's what I got from it. Well, we also got a gold medal, which was super dope, but I got that human experience and that exchange because I wanted to like coach someone to win the CrossFit Games, and I don't know if a lot of athletes think of that, because you could be like, I want to win the CrossFit Games, or I want to go to semis. Okay, cool. What does that mean to you deep down, right? So this season is going to be my wife's last season before we try to have kids. And I was like, okay, we're going to drive the race car, So like, what does that mean to her? So like 2 weekends ago, she went to Crash Crucible, drove the race car. She's going to do team qualifiers for Wadapalooza, and she's going to go ham. And then if that doesn't work out, she's going to look for another one. And we're going to try to do as many comps as possible. She's going to try to, break through this season. And she was 200 place in whatever the quarters to go to semis. And so she has the aptitude to do it. It's just like, are we going to do it? All of those things to be said, like that's the goal. But we've also had conversations like in that process, what do we want to get out of it? Like, are you building relationships with some of these competitors? Like at Crash, she met a lot of great girls, and it's like, are you going to build relationships? Are you going to learn about them? Are you going to, you know, maybe make a team, you know, with these people, who knows? But that's really fun and exciting. We get to go to comps together and experience that together. And it's like, you know, how like other couples will go to, I don't know, like a Garth Brooks concert or something. I feel like that was really dated of a example, but that was a bad example, but you get what I'm saying. Like we as a couple are going to these comps, and I get to watch her be an animal and be a beast and get out there and crush it. And I also coach her. So it's really cool for us to develop that relationship, that coaching relationship. It doesn't work always, but it's great. It's fun. It challenges us, and we get to grow together and more deeply. Right. And so like, we've already had that conversation. So anytime she like signs up for something or she's going to do something, it's like, okay, well, what else are we going to get out of it as well? You know, to fill, because we can't just be going to these comps to like stand on the podium or like compete. And that's great. But I just don't know how happy and fulfilled you're going to be at the end of the day if you're not also asking yourself, like, what else can I get out of this other than competition and quote unquote having fun and learning about myself? Like, what are the deeper meanings there? Or like, what type of contribution am I bringing? What like attitude and presence am I bringing for my fellow competitors? How do I carry myself in conversations with people? Yeah, it's a really interesting thing. And I think that could help a lot of people if they start looking at their season and their year at any level, realistically.
I think the intentionality behind anything is such a key, like it's such a key aspect. I mean, it's not just doing things. And you hear this a lot from really high level competitors, right? It's not just doing things, but it's doing things with a purpose. And you know, it's, you can go through the motions of a session, and don't get me wrong, I think showing up is truthfully, just the consistency of showing up will help you get most places. But in order to get right, in order to really bridge that good to great, like there is that intentionality. I mean, there is those finite details. I love that you brought up coaching your wife. I don't know if you know, I also coach my wife.
I know. I know you do.
And
we're in a select group.
What's that?
We're in a select group.
Which is why I wanted to talk about it. There's very few people that I have on this podcast. Don't get me wrong, there's some great coaches. I mean, the phenomenal coaches, way better than me. But they're a very select group of humans out in the world, especially right now, that coach their wives. And I love that. So I kind of want to go down this rabbit hole a little bit because I think it's going to be fun. And because you shared a little bit about what you've learned or experienced, and I love that because what I took from that is you guys are being intentional about squeezing every single ounce of juice out of every experience that you have, and being intentional about creating those experiences, not just living in them, but then actually being a part of their creation. And I think that's special. I mean, that's something that I can even learn from what you just said there. You know, I think one of the things that I have thought about a lot, and even just from the way that I chose my partner, is like I really wanted that partner to be someone that was very, you know, I don't know what type of like upbringing you had or what your parents told you about marriage, or if they told you anything, or, you know, look, my parents got divorced, so I saw a lot of like just shitty stuff, man, really shitty stuff. And I was old enough to like see it and figure out what was going on too. It was just terrible. Now I'll say this, you know, people would tell me like, you know, hey, it's really important to, you know, marry someone that has similar interests, or, hey, it's really important to, you know, marry someone that, you know, believes, you know, religiously the way you believe. Anyways, there's all these things I was told, and we could go through those, and I don't really care to, because that's not the point I'm trying to make. What I found to be true for myself was it's not just similar interest. It is, you need to, and they even talked about this in this podcast, and I was kind of laughing because I was like, man, I think this, and I thought I was crazy. when I thought this, I was like, no, you need to marry someone that like is so similarly aligned. Like I'm talking not just similar, like aligned. Like I'm talking in line with what you think, believe, is willing. I'm a really philosophical type of thinker. I like to think deep and go down these deep rabbit holes. Why is this happening? Why do I feel this way? Like I want to understand it, and I want someone that's willing to go there with me. And if I'm waking up at 1 a.m, want to have that conversation, they're like, freaking go, And it's like, dude, you need someone just as like. Here, I'll put it this way. I'll put it in the best Alabama way I can put it. You need someone that's just as crazy as you are.
Yeah,
all right.
pretty much.
You need someone that's going to bury the body just like you're going to bury the body. You know what I'm saying? And I know that's a weird way of thinking about it, but that's just my experience. Now, I haven't been married for years and years and years. Okay, it's only been a couple years. But in my experience, that's what I've learned.
Yeah, it's what's actually more interesting, and you touched on something I think the podcast is really good that people should listen to it, especially men, because they do touch on how like when men are widowed, we don't have a lot of friends in general. And I think most men, when they hear that, they're like, yeah, I don't really have a lot of friends. Some have a lot of friends, but majority of men don't have a lot of friends. So when you get married, me too. When you get married, your wife now is your best friend.
100%.
Right. So all of the things you touched on, you have to work on those things. And I'm not saying any way, shape or form is what we do perfect. Like even coaching her, like there are times where I'm like, you just need a different coach. Like this is not going to work. You're not going to get where you want to go. You just call L and be with L because I just can't do this. Like, and you can't do this. It's time to go. And we've had that conversation multiple times. Doesn't happen often. It's maybe like once a year, it's where she's frustrated. I'm frustrated. And it just, it's what may make sense. And then we always come back to like, no, I don't want anyone else coaching you and you don't want anyone else coaching you. So like, let's continue and figure this out.
Yep.
And it's a really interesting thing because early on we had to set up a lot of guidelines of like, okay. And I had literally had to say like, this is coach talking in the beginning, like early on. This is your husband talking. And same thing. Like she would have to be like, this is your athlete talking to you. This is your wife talking to you. And even now it's like, there are times where I'll be coaching other athletes and I'm coaching her as well. And she's an athlete. And like, she's the first one to like, talk back a lot, and that's okay. But I'll sometimes be like, would you say this to like Max, or would you say this to L? Or would you say this to Ben Bergeron? And she's like, well, no, but you're not them. And I'm like,
yeah,
okay.
I was just about to say that.
And it's like, okay, yeah, I get it. And I just try to make a point of like, hey, you're being uncoachable right now. You're a little fired up and that's okay. But like, hey, we got to have some respect. And it's hard, but yeah, that's where we draw the lines and we work on it. And because we have, like you were saying, like we would bury the body the same way. We both have this goal. I want to coach her. I want to see her be successful. I love 100%. Coaching athletes at a high level. And she is a high level athlete and she loves playing CrossFit. So it works very well. Right. And then outside of that, like all of our other things in our life are so aligned. Like we want certain things. She's a nutrition coach for Tactic Nutrition. So like she's in the space of fitness. So that's aligned. We believe in what metabolic health should look like. Obviously like nitty gritty, you kind of argue about, well, maybe this should be like this and like nutrition should be like this, or different hormones should be like this. But that's really cool because we have conversations of like, how would you build the best fitness program for like our parents? How would you help them get through nutrition? How would we do that in a space? And we've owned affiliates. We've owned one affiliate together and we have our garage affiliate. We're looking to open another affiliate here in our area. Awesome. And like those things have to be really aligned too, of like, how would you train somebody? So all of that to be said, like our life, luckily we've curated it to be around health and fitness. And we've worked really hard to do that, which is different than other people. But let's say your life is curated around, tech. One of you works for a phone company and builds the apps or the phone pieces, and this other person works in the social side of it. You have a lot to talk about if you're in a similar industry or even like parallel industries that kind of work together because everything's so interconnected anyways. Outside of like fitness and even fitness, we use so much technology. Like you could be a fitness person and your husband or wife or other could be, in the tech company, and you could be talking about how to make your Instagram better or what cameras to use. Like there's so much stuff to talk about, but you would have to find those connections and build those things. And I think we try to do that a lot. The other thing, secret tip for people out there, and we want to do this. This is our goal. We want to do this for basically the rest of our lives, as long as our health will allow us. We go on a mile walk together every morning with the dog, and not every morning. Obviously, things get in the way, and we go on vacations and stuff, or to competitions. But yeah, we go on the walk together and we spend that time. That's like our quality time, and we leave the phones in the house, and we take the dog and we go around. So we live in upstate New York, and it snows. We do it when it snows. All of our neighbors have said stuff to us. They're like, "You guys are crazy. We see you out there." But it's something that we decided to do and have dedicated ourselves to each other in that time. And we talk about anything we can talk about. It takes us about 20, 30 minutes to walk the mile with the dog and everything. And we just talk about life and what we want and all the things. And we spend that time together intentionally, which helps us, I think, with everything else. So anybody who's like, listen to this, you could figure out how you want to do that, what that looks like for you. I think walking is good. Getting outside is good. And being with your significant other is good. And it's important. I think it'll build a better relationship. So that may be our secret of why I can coach her and why she can listen to me and why we can work together more than any of the other stuff. You definitely got to do all the other stuff too. But I think making sure you have at least 20 to 40 minutes of no phones, no interruptions, just you and that other person talking about deep, deep things, telling your secrets, your desires, your dreams, your frustrations, and going back and forth and bouncing off, being a listener, being a speaker, and really working on that. And that's something that like I've in the past have been very, very terrible with. So it's really cool that like the last 4 years of my life, I've been able to do that with somebody else and have her support in being better. Cause you touched on some things like I am not like a family person, just because like my family is disjointed, parents were never married, stuff like that. So all the things, right? Mm-hmm. And I just never got those values or skills. On the converse, her family is more. It's the nuclear family, and I'm trying to get those values because I think it's important. And the more I dive into it and like lean into those things, I really enjoy trying to like make connections with her siblings and make connections with her parents and try to get people to do things together. And it's not always easy. I'm highly opinionated, so it doesn't work all the time, but you do what you can do. So I think those are the two things that really, really help and make us a good couple to work on fitness together.
Man, so who all do you, obviously you coach your wife and you coach a gold medalist, a world champion at the CrossFit Games. Who else do you coach?
So I have a lot of masters athletes actually. And a lot of that's because referrals of the other masters. And then I have some individuals and teams and stuff, and more like quarterfinal-ish athlete level people. And then we have 3 coaches that work for us now, and I coach them and help them develop program design, work with their athletes, stuff like that. So yeah, I have 23 athletes that I work with one-on-one.
That's incredible, man. I've firmly believe that one-on-one is the future. It's the only way to go. If you're wanting to compete at a high level, I would even say, if really you have any goals that you would consider are definable, I think a coach is the best way to get there. A quote someone told me very early on, it's resonated with me. You can either spend time to save money, or you can spend money to save time, but you can't do both. Yeah. And right. I think that's what a coach does. I mean, look, and I'm really reducing it down to just a transactional thing, money, but I think that's what a coach does. He or she speeds up, that learning time, I think, and I've experienced that myself, and I've helped others and been a part of others experiencing that. And I loved what you said earlier about like, and I totally agree with this. The best, in my opinion, the best part of coaching is being a part of someone's journey, like genuinely sharing experiences with someone over, hopefully, an elonged, period of time. And I think that's just like so special because you're making, like I think about the athletes I coach, for the most part, I talk to my athletes almost every day. Like most of them, I'm talking to them almost every day. And I'm not saying on the phone or FaceTime, but there is some type of interaction with those athletes. And most of the time it's text or voice text. But I feel as if I'm a part of their life, just like their brother is a part of their life or their sister is a part of their life. And I think we would be, as coaches, we would be very remiss to not lean into the gravity, which is the coach-athlete relationship. I think it's a very special one. I think it's which also is what makes also coaching your wife really hard, because that's like a even deeper relationship. And so balancing those is challenging. But I think we would be, as coaches, very remiss to not lean into how important it is to continue to steward well that relationship. And because I've found it to be one of the most fulfilling in my life, and I'm sure a lot of coaches would feel the same way.
Yeah, to touch on what you're saying though, I don't think you necessarily need like a high level goal to get a one-on-one coach. Honestly, like coaching affiliates, it's group model, and that's what we've always done for the most part. Recently, we're in the next one, we have an idea of doing like a hybrid model, because there are so many people out there, and people don't want to hear this, I don't think, very much, but they need to know it. You have a lot of dysfunction, as a GPP person, and you come in and then there's a lot of disparity too. You might get somebody who's really strong, but not aerobic. And then you get somebody who's super aerobic, but not strong. And for their health and longevity, those need two different programs. So
Agreed.
I know the CrossFit model is like, you'll get it because it's, constantly varied, broad times, mold demands, blah, blah, blah. You will over a very long period of time. But what they don't tell you as CrossFit gym owners, and I would argue we were and are, but at our gyms in California, very successful. Both those gyms are still in existence, crushing it. They're still super successful. And I will tell you that our life, like our membership, our person would stay with us up to 3 years. That was the lifespan of a member. And then they would either leave, obviously there's shorters, but the average was 3 years.
That's
so
great.
If you only have somebody for 3 years though, how much impact can you make in a constantly varied program design based on CrossFit methodology? Not very much, because if the exposure that they need to aerobic work is going to be 3 times a week, but in a CrossFit model, you may do it 1 time a week or every other week, they're not going to get enough adaptation to change their cardiorespiratory system to allow them to express health and longevity. Mm-hmm. So there is a pretty gaping hole there, I think, in CrossFit affiliates that could be filled in with the idea of like you class a little bit with some one-on-one. And I think that's a unique thing that we're exploring and how that actually works. And we're going to try it out. But I think there's a value there, and I really would love for people to start exploring that more in the walls of their gym and understanding that from, I guess, a consumer perspective too, because it is more money to do something like that from the person. But like you were saying, it's either you spend the money to save time or you spend a lot of time to save money. And I would rather people spend a little bit more and get a lot more and change their life and their health than just do a blog program or a CrossFit 100%. Class. Now, I think people should go to affiliates, so don't get that twisted. There's a value in that as well. But there's definitely, like, even if you go to an affiliate, I think, okay, let's say you go to an affiliate right now and you take class. I think the best model would be finding a coach that maybe is a lesser value than like full one-on-one. And figure out a way to do class 3 times a week, and then have that coach write your specific training 3 times a week, and you're training 6 days a week for an hour a day. I think that actually might be a better scenario for you for your health and longevity. But then that
Yeah.
still employs a lot of the one-on-one coaches and affiliates.
Look, I don't want to act like I just have like quarterfinal or semifinal athletes, because that's not the case. I mean, a lot of the athletes I have are, I would just say, like, I want to have a good time in the open athletes.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
but, comma, they value one-on-one coaching. So whether that's the relationship of one-on-one coaching, which I can't overstate enough, I think that's very valuable. Whether that's the feedback in which you get, or hopefully one-on-one coaches, you're giving your clients feedback. Hopefully it's not just like good job, but that's a different podcast for a different time. I've just seen some things, and
Sometimes people just want that.
I'm like, what are you doing? Like, do you not like money? Do you not like, being, like good at business? Like, I mean, I'm very confused. Anyways, or what I find is they realize what we've been just discussing, which is, hey, I can shortcut this, quote unquote, and hire this guy, because me trying to, this is typically the conversation, and you tell me if this is your experience. Typically the conversation goes something like this for those athletes. Hey, look, I've been trying to get a handstand push-up, and every time I go in, the 12 o'clock class, Coach Sam just makes me do 2-to-1 push-ups on the ground, and I've been trying to help to get him to get me on the wall. Like, I don't know how to do it. I don't feel like I have the strength. Like, I'm just tired of doing push-ups. I want to do the handstand push-ups like everybody else in the class. Can you help me do the handstand push-ups? And it's like, answer, yes, comma, it's more than just handstand push-ups, right? And that's where you get to like educate and teach. And that's a special relationship. And so as coaches, we can't just be so quick to just be like, well, let's just jump in. It's like, this is your chance. Like, this is your chance to teach and learn and do all the things you love to do. Don't skip the steps, but realize why they're coming to you in the first place. And it's because,
you know what's really interesting is that scenario that you just, of that person coming to you to do handstand push-ups. I've had that scenario hundreds of times, and we don't, what's crazy is people need to understand this. We don't really, you and I don't interact. I wasn't with Brute when you were with Brute. Mm-hmm. It's not like a unique thing to like Brute or whatever. I think a lot of coaches, if they hear this, are going to be like, I've had that experience too. Now stop for a second and be like, okay, A, why is that happening? That's a good question to ask. And
Great
B,
question. How
do we change and fix that? Because I do believe that we all, like, there's so many people in the world to help with just metabolic disease and obesity on the table. We need to change that and help that. And we're already like having the same exact experience in totally different worlds. And the story you just told me has happened to me, and I'm willing to bet it's happened to other coaches. And it's like, wow, do we not all see that there's a huge glaring problem but yet we keep doing this. We keep having coaches, in your example, have people do 2-to-1 push-ups. We keep having coaches out there giving them wrong scaling, or just be like, oh, we'll get it next time. Or like, we're just going to scale so we can reach the stimulus today and get the intensity. And then you and I get these people who want to do these things. Like, if we're getting these people who want to do these things, there's obviously opportunity for other coaches to help these people. Now, I don't want to put us out of a job, because I love that, but I also realize that like there are so many people to help that
agreed.
Our job is limitless, realistically, as long as you can get enough people to come knocking on the door. And it's just, but we do have this bigger problem to solve, I think, in CrossFit, definitely. CrossFit gyms, CrossFit coaching, education. And maybe in years it'll get better, but I am aware of it. And I just wanted to make anyone who listens to this very aware of that. So hopefully we all together can help in some way solve that problem. Because I do think it's very unacceptable that there are people coming to us that says, this coach just keeps telling me to do 2-to-1 push-ups. When I hear that, I'm like, ooh, not only hire me, but someone needs to go talk to that coach and say, hey, 100%. you gotta step it up. Like, don't cancel them. Don't fire them. It's like, do you want to do this? Do you want to become a better coach? Because here's the hard feedback. This person just left because XYZ. Can 100%. You improve? So then that way, the next person that comes to you, you're able to help. And I think that's a valuable thing.
God, man, I just totally agree with this. I mean, I totally 110%. Like, this is such, like, look, and here's the deal. I even see this from like, and this is where it really irritates me. Like, these people paying $350 for a one-on-one coach, and then you get an injury, and then that coach just says, all right, fuck it. We're just going to not touch that anymore. Let's say it's deadlifting, because that's a real common thing, right? Deadlifting, my back is hurt. Okay, Susie Q. By the way, this is a real person that I'm about to tell you about. Okay, so I'm not going to use names because that would be wrong. But she reaches out and says, hey, I see you're coaching this semifinal athlete, this semifinal athlete, whatever. Like, okay, so there's some street cred. Let's have a conversation. Okay, got it.
Yep.
In the little bio thing or in the form she fills out, she tells me I have a one-on-one coach. Okay, I'm not one of those people that's like, gimme. I'm just not.
Right.
I just, to your point, I think I'm an abundance guy. I think there's plenty out there. So I say, hey, you have a one-on-one coach. I just text her. I was like, hey, I think you have a one-on-one coach. Like, I'm like, would love to hear the story, but like at the end of the day, like, you got a one-on-one coach. Like, work it out, whatever. And so we end up jumping on this call, and she tells me the story about, she gets injured and kind of what happens. And I was just like, look, it's easy without all the facts, without all the data, to just spit some stuff, and I can make it sound as sexy as anybody else. I can use all the right words and make you think this, that, the third. I said, but truthfully, here's the only thing that honestly is sending the red flag up the pole is you got hurt doing in this case, her deadlift and, her back, and there was some things going on, and you guys haven't touched it coming up like a year, like just completely pulled it out of the program. And that in conversations, there was no like actual communication or plan to like, this is how we're going to work it back in. Like, here's the goal, because you're competing in the sport of CrossFit, which very much has these things. So 2 options: you either get a plan to figure it out, or B, you leave the sport. There's really only 2 options. So I am shocked at coaches, and I'm not trying to put people on blast here, but I'm shocked at coaches that like, they're not willing to communicate. Like, what this comes down to is just communication, right? Whether it's the affiliate coach, whether it's the one-on-one coach, it's, whatever. Hey, Susie, I know you really want to get handstand push-ups. If I'm being honest with you, like, because look, I was in 2 gyms, like I was running them, like I understand this. Hey, Susie, you're wanting to get these handstand push-ups, so I'm very empathetic to this. You wanted to get these handstand push-ups. I love your wanting to get these handstand push-ups. That sounds like an awesome goal, and you know what? I would love to be able to help you with that. Based off you coming 3 times a week to class, I'm just gonna be like, right? No, seriously. Like, hey, can I be honest with you? Yeah, you can be honest with me, Micah. Like, because I trust you, because I'm coming to this class every day, so you and I have trust, right? If I'm being honest with you, coming 3 days a week, like, and I know you want to get these handstand push-ups, is probably not going to cut it. What I think, if you're open to it, maybe worth a conversation is maybe some one-on-one coaching. And if you really love the classes, because I do too, the community we have here is really great. We could possibly, look at like some hybrid, meaning you would do some one-on-one sessions with me, and here's what that would look like. And you would also continue, your, whatever, 1 to 2 days in the affiliate class. Does that sound like something you'd be interested in? Yeah, that would sound really awesome. Okay, cool. Well, here's what that looks like, and it's like, I don't understand. Some of these people are like, I don't want to be a salesperson. I didn't sell her on shit. I just helped her. I just asked her some questions. Hey, do you want to get handstand push-ups? Yes. Well, what if I told you I could help you do that? Would you be interested in that? Yeah, I would be interested in that. Awesome. Well, then present the solution. Like, it's not, you know what I'm saying? And I know you get it, and I'm not belittling you by saying this in any stretch of the imagination. I'm just saying this because there's coaches that are going to listen to this, and they're like, well, I don't do the sales. That's my general manager. That's my affiliate owner. It's like, dude, you're not doing the sales.
Yeah.
You're just helping Susan. That
right.
literally said, I have a problem.
Yeah. My wife, I think this was on Hill or Fit. He said it. Anyway, she brought it up because it was a good saying. And he was explaining how, like, his dad wouldn't leave the house for anything over $100 because of his experience in life and what he got. And so, like, what she took away from that was like, cause in coaching, especially with us, is like, you're going to help somebody, but it does need to cost something because they're paying you the 6, 7, 8 or 3, 2, whatever years or education or whatever that you've done. They're paying for that because you need to make the money on that, or else you also can't continue doing what you're doing. And if you're
100%.
really successful in helping people, there's nothing wrong with getting paid for that. And most of the things in life that people do, like the guy at the tire shop puts your tires on, he helped you, needed new tires. He solved your problem. He got paid for it. You got new tires. It's a win-win for everybody. It's the same thing. Like she wants handstand push-ups. You know how to do that. Sign her up. You write the program. You get her handstand push-ups. She's going to be really happy with the money that she paid you to solve the problem.
Exactly.
And you get to continue to do this as a professional. So like you said, you didn't sell anything. You are solving the problem. And because we live in a world that things cost money, we're not in the barter system. Like you have to take that money, you know? So I'm sorry, you're selling every day, unfortunately, because yes, we don't live in a barter system. So
Yeah, that's a rabbit
it's a
hole
good
right
point,
there.
coaches. You're on blast.
Yeah. I mean, right, because like it shocks me how many, we'll call it normal people with like truthfully non-competitive goals in sport. And I'll if you ask, well, what's a competitive goal, just for the sake of the conversation so we could have it, I would say sport, right? And then everything outside of that, I would say is a non-competitive goal. Not that it's better or worse, it's just non-competitive as it relates to sport. But the amount of people that come specifically to me regarding skill work is crazy. It's like it blows my mind and look, by the time they've gotten to me, usually they've bought every muscle up ebook known to man. Like I'm just going to start putting out ebooks so I can make an extra, $2,000 a month because people are just like looking for something to buy. And so finally when they get to me, I've tried every ebook, and it's like, yeah, well, that's not written for you. It's like written for the guy or the gal that has a few, and
Well, also too, you don't have someone looking at the video,
100%.
That's the other thing. That's what people don't understand. I think from one-on-one coaching too, is like a lot of people were like, well, I've done these drills. And I would be like, yeah, but I'm watching the video. You did these drills with no one watching you. So we're going to do these drills again, and I'm going to help you and explain some things and show some things to you. I had a girl just the other day was like, I've been doing CrossFit forever. I've been to gymnastics seminars, and I've never heard someone explain it that way and break down my video that way. And I'm excited to work on these. And I was like, okay, yeah, cool. That's what I'm here for. That's the experience I have. And I'm happy we can do that, but it's happening all over the place. So as long as you can fix the problem and you have a good skill set, it'll be all right.
Yeah. Coaches, step your shit up. God bless. Give your people
and it'll make
feedback.
you happy too.
Watch. Yeah, dude, there's nothing that makes me happier than when I get to like, dude, I'm not, look, just for people to understand, like, I'm not perfect. Okay. I'm not saying I'm, give me the gold medal of coaching. That's not what I'm saying. I just I care. I legitimately care. And I care enough to back that caring up with actual action. That's it. Like that's literally it. I'm not special. You're not special. Like it's just, that's it. That's as simple as I can put it. But when I see an athlete struggle with something and then they kill it, I'm the first to pick up the FaceTime and be like, yo, this is fucking awesome. Not because I feel like, oh, that's going to keep them for an extra month. No, because I'm genuinely excited that they just crushed it. And I know how hard it is. That's why I care, and that's why I want to pick up the phone.
Yeah. I mean, and it goes back to the podcast though, because you had a purpose, you had an intention, you did it with somebody else, you achieved something, you hit all of the pieces of the macronutrients of happiness, and it made you happy, and it makes them happy as well because they're in that process. So I think people need to understand that too, is that if you listen to the other podcast, that because of those things that happen to you, you're not getting on to retain them as a client. You're getting on because you hit all the pillars of what creates happiness. And now you're just excited and elated to express that happiness, which is really cool. So like, yeah, that's also a weird thing. I think people need to get over that too. It's like, oh, like they're just trying to, I don't know. I think sometimes maybe coaches or people who have coaches, the people think maybe their coach is not super excited for them, like genuinely. I don't know. I know I am though. So hopefully people know that, but it's because you're hitting all the things. You're really experiencing that moment with them. Like sometimes I'm like, I don't even care to be an athlete. Like what you did, I felt like I did. It's cool. It's really fun.
Dude, exactly. When Ashley got 11th at Granite Games, the hardest semifinal in the world, I was, fight me somebody. Legit, I felt like
you can't fight me. I have the numbers. I could, if someone comes at you, I have the metrics to show you that Granite Games on individual and teams were the hardest by far.
Yeah.
In North America.
Yeah. For sure. No, I was tracking with you. Legitimately, I felt like I was out there because and it's not a selfish thing at all. It's like I see what it has taken to get to this point. I've literally been down in the basement with her, like giving the feedback during the long sessions, waking up early, going to bed late so we can fit quarters around her work schedule. Like I was there. It was a piece of that. And I'm not saying that it was my work. My gosh, make no qualms about it. She did the work. She put in the work. She achieved it. Period. End of story. I simply just got to be a part of that experience. And as a result, yes, there was some level of satisfaction, enjoyment, and purpose derived from those things, which created my happiness. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I think it's very important for coaches, in my estimation and from my view, to be a part of that and invested with that athlete in that way, because that stuff is very it's very fluid. And what I mean by fluid is that it really affects and it overflows not just the way you feel, but then the way the other person feels and the way they perceive things. I think it's very important and can't be possibly overstated.
Yeah. No, that also create longevity as a coach as well too, if you can understand those things and like really lean into them.
Well, dude, this has been fun. I appreciate your time. Is there anything else that you want to chat about before we jumped off here? Man, this was an awesome conversation. I can't wait for people to listen to this.
No, we could talk about a ton of stuff. So no, there's so much. CrossFit has so much going on all the time.
Round 3. Look,
talk about the games. We could talk about the Open. We could talk about the new changes. We could talk about East versus West. There's so much. So let's not do that.
I literally had that on my notes, and then I was like, you know what? There's going to be plenty of those podcasts that are going to happen. Dex Hopkins does a great job at that on the Morning Chalk Up. I was like, I'm gonna let Dex have his fame. I don't need to come in and steal his fame. So
as long as he's happy doing it.
That's right. Be happy. For those of you that are listening, I'm gonna link the podcast that we've been talking about ad nauseum down below. So if you're interested, it's about, I think, an hour and a half long. It's well worth the listen. And I think it'll, if nothing else, it'll give you a different perspective. Even if you don't agree with it, it'll still give you a different perspective. And I think that can be valuable.
Yep.
Cool. Well, thank you. If you want to connect with Todd, connect in the bio. And if you're looking for coaching, he's a great one. He's one of the good ones. He'll actually give you feedback. Anyways.
There's also Bruce strength training.
Yeah, see, that was good. Todd Wise, everybody. Thanks, man.
Thanks for listening to Brute Strength Podcast. As always, you can head over to brutestrengthtraining.com to connect with us and access the links and resources mentioned in this podcast. That's brutestrengthtraining.com for exclusive content and giveaways just for you, our podcast listeners. Consider subscribing so you never miss out. That's all for this episode. See you next time.